Okay, gang, I'm supposed to get the delivery of the side panel for the rolled 68 Camaro basket case. So while I'm waiting, I am going to start cutting on or prepping, I should say, the black Camaro for the mini tub project. And so with that, what I'm going to do, and this is just something I think makes sense, and I'm sure it's in the instructions, even though I haven't really looked at them yet. I'm going to take off the deck lid, remove the doors, clean out all the residual stuff. The plan is to get it up on the lift, drop the rear axle out of it, and that'll give me plenty of room and access to start cutting and measuring and do all the things I need to do. So that's just the first step in this process. Well, things are up in the air at this point. Haha, get it? Up in the air. Okay. So here's a little more overview of the 68 Camaro. Whoever had it before me had bought multi-leaf springs. I believe they're from Landrum. So these are brand new. And of course those are not going to get used. They still have the wrappers on them and the shipping labels and stuff like that. Those are not going to get used because the new owner is going to put in a 4-link suspension with a Ford 9-inch narrowed. And if I understand, he's looking at like 335 for the width of the tire. I don't know. They're on order. He's having them custom made for this car. The pan had been put in by somebody else, the trunk pan. I didn't do that, but they did a pretty good job. Just needs a little sealer around the edges. The floor pans have both been replaced. And again, not too bad. It's easy to hide stuff when you've got undercoating, but it still looks good. I mean, they did a decent job. And of course, I'll be dropping the front suspension out later and doing the firewall, but just kind of give you an overview of what I'm working with. Now, from the videos that I've seen from Detroit Speed, that shock mount is going to go away. When a new mini tub comes in, it's going to come all the way over into this frame rail. So that's going to be cut. And then, again, I'll get those measurements as I move along. At this point, the plan is to drop the rear end out of it, pull the springs, and start doing some measuring. And then I'll drive on from there. So in order to pull the rear end out with the leaf springs, I'll just show you this. GM does this a little bit differently than some of the other manufacturers, at least on these Camaros. Normally you'd have a bolt that came through the frame into the spring shackle, or into the spring itself, I should say. This one has a spring shackle that has 3 bolts. There's one here. I've already removed the one that was here, and there's another one up there. So once those 3 are removed, that whole thing will come out of that pocket. So I've already got the bolts out of the aft section. Still have the front one to go. And with that, I've also got the rear shackles, and I've removed the nut here. I still have the other one to go up there. Those were 11/16, and the bolts up front were 9/16. And so once I'm going to put it back on the ground, and after I pull these the nuts off of these bolts, and then when I get the weight off of it, I can slide these plates off, finish taking out the single front bolts on both sides, and that whole thing will just come right out. Well, rear end's out, and slightly in my way, but I'll find a place for it. I did open up the instructions from Detroit Speed, and as you can see, there's an instruction sheet, a DVD, and a series of templates for where to mark and where to cut and what to make, and of course stickers. So I will be following these instructions here shortly and starting to draw lines and whatnot to make progress and get everything cut out so I can get these mini tubs in. Okay, so the instructions say to draw a line 2 3/4 inches inboard of the original wheelhouse. So I did, and basically I just took an old compass and attached a Sharpie to it, use that as the point instead of the regular point, and trace that. So what I'm going to do, they said don't cut that yet, and I'm not going to. I'm also bared the metal up here on these mounts for the brace, for the hinges. So in the instructions they have you remove this entire brace. So I'll probably go ahead and do that and get that out of the way. Once that's out of the way, then it tells you about removing the wheelhouse itself. So one way or another I'll get that out. I may use a plasma cutter to get the main mass out of the way. I haven't decided yet. And then I'll go into more detail as I move along with the frame rails. Alright, so I made a little progress. I took my plasma cutter and cut out the bulk of the inner wheelhouse. One of the harder things to get out really was this trunk support, or I should say trunk brace, for the hinges. They have more welds there than I've seen in a lot of other places, and they say to take that out, and I guess you end up kind of repositioning it a little bit to make it fit the new wheelhouse. The other thing is giving me, and I knew this was going to be the most difficult part, is removing the remnants of the inner from that flange right there. I know it's hard to see, but that's that rusty looking area there. That is the flange for the outer wheelhouse, and I've got it up. You know, you can see part of it up there is gone. Now I also revised. I looked a little more at the new piece, and you know, it said to draw this line at 2 3/4 inches. So I did, and I traced it all the way around the curve. But that's not how it's going to work. It's going to be short of that curve. So I just did a temporary, you know, adjustment, move that line forward, because the wheelhouse will be in line. It'll come straight across and then curve. So I also have to remove part of that seat brace, because obviously it's going to have to come inboard to clear the wider panel. And I just want to show you those couple things. I'm going to keep working on it and hopefully get all that flange out today, and then I'm going to come back and probably use the plasma cutter to cut out the bulk of this section. Well, for the most part, the upper half of the inner wheelhouse is gone, and I'll be cutting on the frame here shortly. But I wanted to show you something that they didn't really cover very well in the Detroit Speed information, and that was this little seat bracket. Now they just say drill out the welds and remove it. So let me show you where that went. If my hand stays out of the way, it went right there. But what they don't tell you is that top portion makes up part of this area right here. So it'd be really difficult to remove that without removing everything. So what I did is I cut it off right there, and I also cut it up here on this side where the flange, it flanges back that way. I cut it right there. Now in doing that, that leaves me some structure, but you know, I'm gonna have to make something, because the new panel, you know, it'll be over here somewhere. So either way, I just wanted to show you that. I think it makes more sense for me to leave these pieces, because now I can weld to those and make that solid again. Other than that, the hardest part was cutting off the inner flange from the outer wheelhouse. That was a struggle, because it wasn't spot welded like normally. It was really weird. It was a whole bunch of spot welds holding it together. So at this point, I'm going to follow up with the instructions that they have, and you can barely see my line there. But I'm going to end up cutting the frame, and they also talk about leaving a little flange of material. Where I measured off that 2 3/4, they leave, if you look at the instructions again, they leave a little bit, and then you bend that down. So I can show you that. I think, get over here. Yep, the rear end's still in my way. You know, the instructions show you this, show you this. Where's it? Oh, there it is, right there. See, they show you drawing an additional, I don't know what the gap is. It says do not cut this area. This area will be used as a folded flange. Oh, there it is, 3/4 inch. So gonna leave a little on this angled portion that goes up from the floor up to the bottom, let's say, of the seat mounts. So I'll do that. I'll trace that out and leave that piece and then bend it down. All right, I feel like I've made some pretty good progress today. I ended up cutting with my plasma cutter, following the line, or actually inboard, should I say, outboard of the line just slightly, and ran that all the way back so I can get the bulk of the material loose. And then I took my cutoff wheel and cut it to the line, so it should be right at the proper distance according to the measurements that I was provided in the instructions. And then I left, I don't know if you can see, yeah, there's that flange. There's a 3/4 inch drop back from the original line, and that will become a flange. That's going to get bent down. Here is the shock mount and the associated metal that holds it together. As you can see, I started to remove some of the material where the spot welds were, and then I realized, hey, I don't need to do that because I'm going to cut all that off. So you can see all the pieces, parts. Also the frame rail right here. When I cut it up on top, that was easy. The bottom half, there is a template in the instructions that you're supposed to lay underneath here to give you a guide to cut the bottom half. So that's been cut, and what they don't show you is stuff like this right here. This had the third bolt for the bump stop for the rear axle. That's going to go away, and it appears that the way the metal is shaped, it kind of angles out a little bit. And so they don't really talk about this much in the instructions from what I could see, but I'm going to have to close this out and also build the piece that goes in here. I have not test fit the piece yet, but I'm just going to show you this at this point. This will probably be the end of this video, and I will create the second video, or in the series, after this. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned.